Can we give Dr. Leslie another hand for that wonderful presentation? Wow. I'm grateful for that, and it is making explosions happen in my mind, even as I prepare to talk tonight, and I think it's going to be some wonderful dancing together of what you just heard and what I'll share in a moment. First, let me say thank you so very much for having me. This is my first time here, and I already feel at home here. There's a divine energy and spirit in this very room, and I'm grateful to be a part of that with you. Thank you so very much, Dr. Krause, for your warm welcome and hospitality. Dean Grundy, thank you so very much. You read my whole bio, Dean. I was sitting there saying, man, I should have sent him the short one. That's especially when you said 25 under 40. I'm like, I'm not under 40 anymore. Life is changing, huh? So thank you for that. And Dr. Leslie, again, thank you so very much. I'm excited to continue learning from you even after this experience. Let me begin by saying all of us are more than what we do. And I am more than what I do. In addition to a lot of things, some of which you heard in the bio a few moments ago, I'm also a dad. And I have two boys, Heber Brown IV and Ethan Brown. And Ethan amended his name. He said some years ago, he told me and my wife, he said, my name is Ethan Brown I now, because he was tired of hearing about the fourth all the time. So he said, well, I'm the first. And we honor his agency to claim his name. And so Ethan Brown I is 12 years old and Heber is 14. They both play basketball. And I am a proud and very excited basketball dad. I go to all the practices and all the games and record everything. And tonight, Ethan has a basketball game. Ethan is playing right now. And if I was not here, I would be at his game. Now, because I make everything concerning their basketball games there, my children are very gracious when I have to miss a thing or two. But right now, a piece of my brain is thinking about my 12-year-old son, the starting point guard in the Parkville Recreation basketball team. His team is called North Carolina, and they are playing right now. I wonder if you can help me in my dad duties to let Ethan know that his dad is thinking about him tonight, and with friends and new friends who also are supporting and honoring that as well. So can I do something real quick? I'm gonna record it. So can I do this? Can I have y'all to do, let's go Ethan, let's go. Let's go Ethan, let's go. Yeah. Let's go Ethan, let's go. 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 That's awesome. Y'all are great. Now, anybody who's a parent of more than one child, you know you can't do something for one that you do not do for the other. So can I get just a few minutes of let's go Heber, let's go. 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 Thank you. Woo! Thank you so much. Thank y'all. I really do appreciate it. And that's going to earn me some dad points with the boys once I get home later tonight to find out how the game went. Thank y'all, those of you who are online. I saw y'all too. I felt the love through the screen. Thank you. Thank you so very much for being a part of the cheer and the chant too. So family, I'm a Black Baptist preacher. So in the tradition in which I was raised and the tradition in which I am proud to be part, call and response is a part of my tradition. So you will not offend me if you see something or hear something that moves you to respond in a way that is authentic to who you are. In fact, I might just feed off of it and give some energy back at you. Is that all right? And so don't feel this to be pure lecture. Sit in this posture of a conversation. And at different points, I may ask you even to turn and tell your neighbor something, and being true to my tradition. So I am going to talk about the Black Church Food Security Network as one example of many around the country and the world that is attempting to look at how we might organize for faith, food, and freedom, sitting in the powerful intersections of faith, food, and freedom. And in fact, Faith, Food, and Freedom is a part of the title of the book I'm writing right now. I solicit your prayers as I'm learning. This is my first book, and I am learning that writing a book is more than a notion. It's more than just putting words on a page. It's psychological, it's emotional, it gets all in your guts and your bones. And so I sincerely solicit your prayers. My manuscript is due in a couple of months. And then by spring of next year, the book will be on the shelves. It's called Nothing More Sacred: Radical Black Church Stories of Faith, Food, and Freedom. And in this book, I seek to show and spotlight the many churches, Black churches and ministers who have long seen the connections and intersections between our faith and farming and food. It is my humble attempt to add additional names to the long list of names that have given attention to ecological and environmental concerns. Oftentimes, Black pastors and African-American grandmothers are not on that list of the persons that we look to for wisdom and insight about such things. But the more I studied, the more I saw that this too has been a part of the canon of our experience and witness as African-Americans. And this book will hope to add those names so that we might study, glean, and learn all the more from those who may never have taught at the academy or never earned degrees, but their wisdom is just as rich and important for the time in which we live now. And so I solicit your prayers as I move this pen and get this book out so that we might honor more of our collective ancestors in this great work. So let me tell you a story. As Dean shared in the bio, I pastored for 14 years the Pleasant Hope Baptist Church, and it felt like I was right on course with checking all the boxes of what my life was supposed to be. I'm a preacher's kid. Any other PKs in the house? We made it, y'all. We made it. We survived it, and we're still here. So as a preacher's kid, y'all know, and PKs, we do a little bit of everything. We've done all the jobs. We've done it all. And when our friends were outside playing, we often were in church somewhere helping mom or dad and our family. And so a part of my experience growing up with my grandfather as a bishop in the Free Will Baptist denomination, and my dad as a pastor and bishop in the Baptist church, Heber III, following in the line of the Hebers, was in line to be the next to share the word of the Lord. Now, I'm grateful that my parents never put pressure on me to step forward in this kind of way. They gave me room to figure out my own journey, and it was so that I received a call to preach. And being called to pastor the Pleasant Hope Baptist Church was a big check in my journey, and one that I've been praying about. And I knew what kind of pastor I wanted to be as well. I wanted to be a community pastor. I wanted to live where I pastored. I wanted to see and share life with the members of the congregation. I wanted people who didn't even come to the church. I wanted them to know Pastor Brown. I wanted to be in the grocery store and at the gas station and see the people who I love and share life with. And that's what God gave me the great privilege to experience as the pastor of Pleasant Hope Baptist Church. But what God also gave me the opportunity to see was in my duties in pastoral care. God allowed me to draw very close to the bedsides and hospital beds and in conversation in living rooms with members of my church who were being hospitalized over and over and over again. And when I first started pastoring and I was seeing the pattern of people being hospitalized and realizing and learning that being a pastor is so much more than preaching on Sunday morning. Yep. I was finding myself in the hospital a whole lot, visiting members of the church. And I was doing what seminary taught me to do. Walk in, give a scripture, give prayer. Don't stay too long. Be encouraging and leave and stay in touch with the family and continue to keep tabs on how things were going and what was needed. Well, I started doing that and doing that and doing that. And I started seeing that many of the people who were there, many of the members of our church, it was the same people. And I have to be honest and say that eventually I grew weary with showing up to give a scripture, and giving a prayer, and then walking out. I wanted to do something more than that. And so one day, as I'm thinking about it, praying about it, I looked at my neighborhood, and there across the main intersection from our church was a market that had nutrient-rich produce. It's in the top left corner of the photo on the screen. And Pleasant Hope Baptist Church is in the bottom right corner of this photo. See how close it is? I was like, this is a no-brainer. Walk across the street, talk to the people at the market, and maybe we can pipeline produce from that market straight to our church. It's that close. But when I walked into that market that day, I realized that there were some barriers there. I looked at the price tag on the produce that was in this particular market, and I had sticker shock. I could not afford to make this market a part of the regular shopping of my home, much less the people I was sharing life with at my church. And then there was the vibe in that market as well. That market, there was no sign that said I wasn't welcome, but there was a vibe in the space. There was an energy in the room that suggested that that market was not designed with me in mind. I did not know as much that day, but what I learned later was that in just crossing that street, I had crossed one of the boundaries of the red line in Baltimore City. And that Pleasant Hope was a church that close to the red line. Now, some of you know about redlining. You know about the history and legacies of redlining in this country. Our cities and communities were in the 1930s and 40s with the Homeowners Loan Corporation, backed by the government, created these maps that pointed to the desirable parts where they were going to pour investment and provide support for mortgages and the like, and then the not desirable parts where there would be divestment and there were plans to keep things like landfills and other undesirable locations on those sides of town. And in many instances, African-American communities were drafted, planned, developed, and created to be on those undesirable parts of town. Those parts of town also, those red line communities also dictated where food would be. And in many red line communities, it was already known in the 30s and in the 40s where nutrient-rich food would be and where it would not be available. Just by crossing that street, I crossed over a red line. Later on, when I did research on this street, which is called York Road in Baltimore, I learned that the story was more gruesome than I even initially imagined. That just by crossing the street, life expectancy dropped or raised by 10 years by crossing that street. Annual household income, $30,000 difference just by crossing the street. Infant mortality rate, unemployment, go on down the line. All the metrics that would point to human flourishing and communal well-being, stark difference just by crossing the street. I didn't know it that day when I initially walked over to that market. I didn't know all those things were in play. They were invisible barriers, obstacles that was right there. And though my eyes initially saw proximity to fresh produce, what my eyes did not see was how high the walls had been built to keep the food on this side of the street and not on that side of the street. I walked in that day, I saw the prices, I felt the vibe. I said, oh, no, this will not work. While I intended to talk to someone who was in charge of the space to talk about partnership, after getting that vibe and that feeling, I said, no, I'm gonna trust my gut on this one and not gonna pursue a conversation about it, because I refused to lead my congregation into a partnership that might require us to be in a posture of subjugation in order to receive what Dr. Leslie just told us is a human right. So if it's a right, I am not willing to beg for something that is a right. So I did not lead my congregation in that. I walked out, and I got to tell you, I was upset, because what we needed was right at our fingertips, but I could not get it. And what it meant was I was watching the people of my church get sick, watching people of my church die, when what we needed was literally right there. So y'all feel Baptist. I just feel it in the room. Y'all just feel. Albert plays piano. Albert, just get ready to put me in E flat, just in case. Just in case. And so I left out of the market that day. I walked back to the church, and while I'm walking, I'm upset, and I have a conversation with God. And I've been walking with the Lord long enough, and some of y'all know when you have a deep relationship with the Lord, it does not have to be high cotton prayers all the time, as my grandma would say. It gets real. I felt God tap me on the shoulder and say, Heber, what's wrong? Why are you mad? God, you know why I'm mad. What we need is right there across the street, and we can't get it. And I felt the Spirit of God say to me, Heber, look to your right. When I looked to my right, I was near the front door of the Pleasant Hope Baptist Church. I was about to walk back to my office. God said, look to your right. And when I looked to my right, this is what I saw. And I walked past this scene hundreds of times. The left side of this picture at the time was owned by the church, Pleasant Hope. We didn't have any permanent ongoing use for that land. It was just something if we had a cookout or something, we'd go out there, but it had no ongoing use. The right side of this picture was privately owned by an elderly gentleman who was so tired of cutting the grass that he paid a dump truck to come dump rocks and stones all over his lawn. I can't tell you how many times I parked my car and walked past this scene, time and time and time again. But it was something about that day, with divine discontent bubbling up in my spirit, where God gave a vision that if you can't afford what they have across the street, roll up your sleeves and grow it yourself. I go into the sanctuary and I started telling the members, y'all, I received a vision from God. And some of the members said, oh, here he goes again. They were very accustomed to me receiving visions from God that we have to move on right away. So they hear the vision. Let's start a garden, y'all. Let's grow food on the land that we own. And as some received that vision, they stepped forward and assisted in transforming this space into this. Yeah. Yeah. There is about 5 years between that first photo and this photo. In fact, if I was to show you the most immediate photo after the initial one, it would be this same plot of land with just 4 small raised beds. I went to Home Depot and I bought 4 raised bed kits. They were on sale for $34. I came back to the church. We started with just 4 small raised beds. And I still have pictures of us putting the raised beds together, and the children and the mothers and the seniors sitting together, putting it together. I'm probably going to add that photo to the presentation because I don't want people to see the finished product and not appreciate the journey. I think it's Zechariah 4:10 that says, "Despise not the days of small beginnings." And I'm here to say that small beginnings can go a long way. This garden now, 1,500 square feet, grows broccoli and kale and collard greens and corn. We started by growing stuff that people actually eat. Sometimes when I'm engaging with various community gardens and the like, they like to impress each other with the kind of stuff to grow that people don't even eat. It's pretty, but what do I do with this? And so it was important for us to start with what people actually eat and then grow out from there. So we started growing these raised beds, and I can't tell you how excited I was when we got corn and watermelon in Baltimore City, growing corn and watermelon and all of this. Oh my goodness, we were the talk of town because we were growing in such a way on our land. And then we blossomed out and started growing herbs in the garden as well, and fruit trees as well. And we started talking about and bringing people together around taking those herbs and making tinctures and looking at ways that we could heal our bodies by what we were growing. Y'all, people started coming to their garden who ain't never been to the church before. Started making donation and leaving items, and for some, the garden became their regular sanctuary, not the church building. And it took me some reorienting because I had to reconsider what faith-filled discipleship and spiritual formation looked like. And maybe it doesn't just look like classes and chairs and desks and a teacher in front and 8 weeks of whatever. Maybe for some people, the sacred space is outside. Y'all gonna have me preaching in a minute. I'm trying to tell you, I feel it now. It's coming up. When we saw the members start sharing online recipes and bragging about their meals and talking to each other about what they were going to make that night because of the produce they got from the church garden that morning, I knew that things were picking up with this garden. And then when I saw and realized that the reason that our garden was as successful as it was because of this woman right here, Maxine Nicholas. She went home to be with the Lord in 2017. But when we first talked about this garden and I shared this vision from God, she was the first one who rose from the pews and said, "Pastor Brown, I'll help." She didn't just help. She became the leader of the effort. She was born and raised in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. On a farm. There's some Roanoke Rapids in the room. There's a church there. Go ahead. I know that's right. I love it. I love it. Y'all got some good folk in Roanoke Rapids. Lots of collards. And that's what Sister Maxine helped us to grow. Collard greens. And she showed us, she helped me to see, though my roots are down south, I was born in Baltimore City. Sister Maxine helped me to see you don't always need acres upon acres to grow a whole lot of food. Some of y'all grow tomatoes. And you know, one tomato plant, when it starts going, you'll be giving those tomatoes away because you can't even keep up with how much the plant is producing. She helped us to see collard greens and kale and everything. And I was just so amazed at what I was seeing because Sister Maxine was the president of the sanctuary choir. She was a leader in the senior ministry. She put trips together for the seniors. When I arrived at the church, that's what I saw her doing. And I made the mistake of thinking that her gifts were just contained in those specific roles. And her gifts went far beyond that. It got me to thinking, who else in the congregation has far more gifts than what churches and our church had historically recognized? I mean, if you could hold a note, we knew what to do with you. Go join the choir. If you can stand for an hour, okay, you're on the usher board. If you can keep the beat, get in the band, you know. We are good to recognize gifts that serve institutional purposes and worship functions. But what about the gifts that God gives that go beyond our framing of what worship looks like? Sister Maxine helped me to see that she wasn't just a sanctuary choir president and leader of the singing ministry, but she had something in her, and it was almost like she was waiting for the church to recognize and for her pastor to recognize that she has more gifts than what she's doing right here. She rose from the pews, helped with the garden, and she brought the whole AARP club with her. Look, y'all, I thought it would be like the young adults who jumped out there with me when I first started with this. I was, at the time of the garden, I was about 29 years old, already social justice activist in this city. I'm like, we're about to lead a food revolution. And I'm like, the young adults, come on, y'all, we're gonna get this work done. I said, I'm the young pastor, they're gonna come alongside their young, fearless leader. And they came for the first day. They was taking pictures in the yard together and selfies and group photos. But after that first day, they were gone. But you know who stayed? There you go. They stayed, and they stayed. And Sister Maxine, if they started to falter, Sister Maxine would get on them, because Sister Maxine had more juice than the young pastor. The new young pastor was still earning some chips in the congregation, but Sister Maxine had been there for 50 years. So if she said something, they were gonna go and move. She was the reason that we renamed the garden Maxine's Garden. And to this very day, we honor her, and we have a plaque there in the garden with her name, and her sisters came up from Roanoke Rapids, and we had ceremony on that land after she passed. We poured water and called her name and thanked God for her witness. And everywhere I go, I talk about Maxine Nicholas. In part, not only to honor her, but also because what I recognized was that every church has at least one Maxine Nicholas, right? This is the woman who, if you want to get something done, she'll get it done. You want to build something, move something, she's the one. And when I recognize that profile, and in fact, that person's name and face is on your mind right now, that you know that they'll be there. Reliable, committed, love the Lord, love the church, love their community, and willing to do everything they can to help grow it. I say her name, I lift that profile, because what I began to see was, wait a minute. This garden is doing well, praise God. But there's nothing so special about Heber Brown or Pleasant Hope Baptist Church that this very thing can't happen in other places. The basic ingredients almost every church shares: space, some land, people, insight, relationships. We have the basic ingredients. And my brain began to do a thing. I began to say, wait a minute. What if, a lot of great ideas start with what if. What if we helped other churches do the same thing and then had those churches work together to create and co-create food ecosystems that can address the issue of hunger and food insecurity, not from a posture of begging, but from a posture of building, growing, and tapping into the existing genius that was right in front of us. So as we continue to work and think that through, 2015 comes. And this is something that you at Eden might really appreciate and relate to, because in 2015 in Baltimore, a young man named Freddie Gray died at the hands of Baltimore City police officers. And the city, much like this place, experienced demonstrations and rallies and protests. And when that happened in Baltimore, some of the communities near the epicenter of where Freddie Gray was killed and where demonstrations were happening, these communities that were already facing and feeling the poison of food apartheid long before Freddie Gray was killed. These communities already have experienced and had experienced institutional violence for generations. And Freddie Gray's death at the hands of Baltimore City Police was like a match. There were other names. And I've not even been here a full day yet, but I'm sure even here, there were other names. Yes. Before Michael Brown, there were people who were on the wrong side of a terrible situation with police. And so for us, there was a long list of names. There was something about that moment where folks in Baltimore said enough. When that happened, the communities near the epicenter of the demonstrations that were depending on corner stores for their food, they did not have access to those corner stores. They closed down. And also the school system shut down for a few days. So that meant 80,000 Black children, many of whom depended on breakfast and lunch at school, now did not have meals. They put a curfew on our community. They put a curfew on the African-American parts of Baltimore City. They also stopped running public transportation in those parts of the city. So you can imagine the strain on what that felt like when the resources and social services backed up and there were people who now did not have access over getting the food that they needed for their families. Well, our church phone began to ring, and it began to ring because people knew us as the food church, the garden church. And when they called us, we called our farmer friends. And our farmer friends put potatoes on the back of pickup trucks and other produce and drove it into the city. Our multi-purpose room at the church was changed into a food depot and distribution center. And that church bus that was just sitting there in the parking lot anyway, we started loading up food on that church bus, and I started driving food around the city of Baltimore, so that when we got the calls, the church bus started moving with members and with food to get food around the city. Farmers, church, community. Government wasn't a part of that. Corporations weren't a part of that. Nonprofits were not a part of that. Farmers, church, community. And that thing showed me a picture. It showed me a picture of what was possible. Prophetic imagination, if you will, of us co-creating a food system where we literally were in the driver's seat of not only growing, but also distributing the food. And that's how the Black Church Food Security Network was born. So who are we? Started in 2015. Now, Dean, that number's gone up from 100 to now more than 200, 215 congregations across the United States of all sizes, 125 Black farmers in our Black Farmer Directory, and we work together to co-create Black food ecosystems. So I guess this is my first, my Baptist moment. When you hear the word ecosystem, what comes to mind for you? Can I ask you to take a moment just to turn and talk to your neighbor real quick? Ecosystem, what comes to your mind? Take a second. Okay. Awesome. This is good. This is good. All right. Land the plane in a moment if you can. Land the plane in your conversation. What's some of the things that you heard? When people hear ecosystem, what did you hear from someone else? Let's call it out. Science, Amazon, the whole of creation, everything. Mm-hmm. Say again. Soil and microbes.
Mutual dependence.
Mutual dependence. That was a. What did you say? You said the same thing? Yep. Mutual dependence. Anybody else? What came to? Protection. Connections. Interconnections. Terrariums. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds great. That's awesome. I love it. All of that plus so much more. All of that plus so much more. And so when we started, we weren't talking about ecosystems, but as we've grown, and this is a journey, y'all. I didn't come out here to share with you a finished and fixed product. I came to talk about a journey. So ecosystem is something that's newer to our vocabulary because we needed words that was matching what actually was happening. And ecosystem started to come up more and more. I can't point to just one thing. Yes, we do gardens, but it's this, and also it's that. And this is wonderful thing that's happening where it dances together. This and that dances together and communicates and shares information and resources like the mycelium in the soil, when trees are communicating with each other in ways that our ears are still trying to decipher. There's a language and a communication that's happening with I think mycelium is so cool. It's the coolest thing, isn't it? And that's what we're seeing in our organizing, mycelium. I can't even capture it all, but it's happening without our instigation of it. It's happening. Ecosystems. And so we co-create Black food ecosystems anchored by Black churches. Why? Well, in my humble opinion, the Black church is the most sustainable institution in Black America. Since the late 1700s, with the founding of the African Methodist Episcopal denomination and many Baptist churches that were founded around that same time up to this present day, these institutions, these Black-led institutions, have been far more than just places where we worship on Sunday morning. It's been place for advocacy, place for nurture, place for joy, place for relief, place for assistance and resource. And they've been able to weather and stand the test of time. Stand the test of time, stand the test of terrorism, churches being burned down and pastors being assassinated in their churches, little girls being bombed in Sunday school. We've been able to withstand crosses being burned in the front yard of Black churches, and the church is still here. These institutions have shown a nimbleness to be able to adapt and grow and change. Is it a panacea? Absolutely not. There's a whole lot of stuff that happens in these places and spaces that make me point to it as the preferred anchor institution for our work. The soil of this place. We wanted to plant a seed in the bosom of Black churches because when I'm dead and gone, we want this work to continue. And we needed a container that has shown itself to have the muscles to withstand and adapt and grow. And we also do this work with Black farmers, and you've already heard so much of why. Dr. Leslie has outlined beautifully some of the very grim statistics with respect to farmers and Black farmers in particular, and the challenges that we have historically faced in Black farmers. And accomplices are part of our ecosystem as well. I remember doing this presentation in Greensboro, North Carolina, and when I read that description and I had accomplices at the end, one of the pastors pulled me to the side and said, "Reverend?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Nah," and he whispered it kind of to me, I think you might want to take accomplices off of the description, because people might think there's some illegality going on with the work that you all are doing." And I just smiled and nodded. I've been trained well to honor my elders. Yes, sir. Thank you so very much. But as you can see, accomplices are still there. In part because we recognize that historically, Agency in the Black community has been seen as criminal, has been seen as undesirable. Charity is fine in the Black community, but agency, autonomy, self-help, doing for self, something about that makes the power structure nervous, and it categorizes that as illegal. And so the word accomplice there is our tip of the hat to that very real history and the recognition that what should not be seen as a threat is, unfortunately, when it comes to Black people organizing resources to build power, and they're always being accomplices, helping to move the effort forward as well. I'm gonna speed this up, y'all. Here are some of the, Dr. Leslie already spoke to some of the challenges with respect to Black land loss, and from heirs property to USDA discrimination and so much more. So much is there, so much has already been spoken to. But I want to talk a little bit about our approach to this work. Asset-based community development, ABCD. Through that, we do not start with the question of what's wrong. We start with the question, what's strong? What's working? What's moving? What's growing? And when it comes to the Black community, when we talk about Black churches, there's a whole lot that's strong and working. Parking lots, kitchens, land, vans, multi-purpose rooms, and so much of this goes underutilized Monday through Saturday. And I see it as a sin for God to bless us with so much, and we use it in so little. And we don't open up the doors so that what God has blessed us with can continue to be a blessing. One of the first chairman of the deacon board at the church at Pleasant Hope, Deacon Charles Sanders, he's in glory now as well, but he would often pray when we were in gathering and meetings together. He would say, Lord, bless me to be a blessing. And for our church spaces that have been blessed greatly, we help them to think about how what you've been blessed with can now be a blessing to somebody else. We also think about historic African-American denominations in the United States. And you see some of the totals around membership of these denominations. Family, I see an untapped resource right under our noses of people, relationships, structures, systems, and stuff that has a spotlight on Sunday morning, but is waiting in the wings for a mission, a purpose, a call, a vocation for Monday through Saturday. What more can we be doing? And though I'm talking about Black churches in the context of my work, that goes beyond Black churches. Every denomination, every church should be having the kinds of questions, holding and sitting with the kinds of questions I'm raising now. Here are our programs. I'll just list out a few. One of them is called Operation Higher Ground. We go around and help churches, African-American historic congregations, start gardens on the land that they own. We recognize that Black land loss does not just apply to Black farmers in history, but it also applies to Black communities across the United States in the form of gentrification and eminent domain. Yes. And so Black church-owned land is more powerful for us because it's land that has some additional buffers and barriers against state violence. And I am naming gentrification as state violence. And there are elected officials who will think twice before coming to a congregation, or developers would think twice before coming to a congregation to take their land. As politicians are creatures of self-preservation, and they recognize that organized people and collective action can really end their political career, so you don't want to go banging on a beehive and take a church's land. So it's strategy, y'all, with strategy, but also, I'm gonna go back for 1 second before it plays. This is so Operation Higher Ground, help churches start gardens on their land. We give them $500 of seed money. We also give training and technical assistance. I become an extension, and our team becomes an extension of their ministry, because we know that oftentimes you got a faithful few doing everything, and we don't want to burn out the faithful few. And so we bring support alongside to help move the effort forward. We also have, this is called our Soil to Sanctuary Market. It's a Black farmers market, but we do it on Sundays at the church right after service. because everybody knows that after church, we all are hungry. Being holy makes you hungry. You're gonna go eat somewhere. So why not bring the farmers and businesses right there on the grounds of the church? And we bring the market to the church on Sunday morning. Check this out.
Let's talk about a great God. Come on. Great God, always powerful. Nothing's too hard.
But to make sure that our people eat healthy so they can cure some of the illness that they have, and for black farmers so we can get back to own our own land and property like we used to back in the day.
It's important to be a black farmer because we gotta have something of our own. When we meet customers, say, okay, I raised these vegetables. I nursed them and took care of them myself.
And supporting farmers markets is a good way to connect with people and to try to educate people too on fresh foods. A lot of people don't really know how good fresh foods can be until we still try to do different things and new foods. So for me, it's a passion. Been doing it for a long time. Retired from USDA about 12 years ago, but we still continue in agriculture.
Line dancing, classes, laughter. These are what our markets are at church on Sunday morning. It's been a wonderful experience to do that. And you saw me in that video, and what I was sharing was elderberry syrup. And so I'm a big fan of elderberry syrup. I grow elderberries in my own garden. I learned how to process them from local herbalists. They helped me to put it all together. And I was taste testing my elderberry syrup, and I left that market with orders. People wanted to buy it. And I said, man, oh man, I got to add another thing to my list to make more elderberry syrup. But it's wonderful, wonderful experience also with the Sanctuary Market. We also, as a part of that class, have a part of that experience, we have a class called Mindful Eating, where we have a therapist who's also a chef do classes with groups at churches. And like before the cooking class, where everybody has produce, knives, everything they're going to cook along with the chef, but they start with meditation. They sit in a circle and meditate and calm and center. And our wonderful jury leads everybody through an experience, not just of learning how to cook something, but being transformed because of the experience of engaging food in this way. I'm going to pass through this because I really want to get to our conversation and Q&A, but all of these videos are on our YouTube page. If you go to Black Church Food Security, this video is our Black Farm Tour. We put church folks on church buses and go to farms. People need to get their feet on the sacred soil of Black farms and feel what that's like and hear stories. And so we take small groups to go to farms. And it is wonderful to see when I see people who've not been on the farm in a long time or ever. And it's great when we get them to eat straight from the land. I remember seeing one of our partners and members and board members now, Austin Monet, eat a strawberry straight from the patch for the first time in her life, and I got it on video. I saw her world change with one bite. She said, I'll never go back to the grocery store for strawberries again because the taste, and some of y'all know this, farm fresh tastes better than the stuff we buy off the shelves. And so it's a great experience to have them do that as well. That video also is on our YouTube page. Our final program that I'll talk about tonight is called the ARC program, inspired by the story of Noah and the Ark. And I'm looking at climate change, and I'm looking at anti-Blackness and violence in this country. I'm looking at all the challenges in society, and I'm seeing the waves and waves that are going to hit the most vulnerable communities and those who are historically marginalized first and the hardest. We need to have an ARC. Through our ARC program, we help churches to buy in bulk from Black farmers. And as they buy from Black farmers, we take the truck down south to go pick up their order and bring it back to the church. Kingdom Fellowship AME in Prince George's County, Maryland is one of the first churches that bought in bulk. And to this date, and over the past year, they bought about $30,000 worth of produce from Black farmers and utilized that produce for their food distribution ministry. And we help churches to use this produce for their annual meals that you know you're going to eat every single year. And we help churches to see you ain't got no business going to Walmart to get collard greens or sweet potatoes. You got farmers in your community that could stand to use that support if you take the time to find them and have those relationships and connections. We help churches to do that. I'm almost done, y'all. This is by the numbers, some interesting stats about our organization by the numbers. One is, I really want to point out, is this one. How many member churches do our churches have? We have 215 congregations in our network. And I was blown away when I initially saw this number that most of our congregations have 350 members or less. That's it. This massive national movement, 350 members or less. I thought mega churches would be initially, but no. The churches that are doing mega ministry, that have deep roots in local communities. Many of them whose members do not drive in from 30, 45 minutes away, but actually who live down the street. And generationally, they've attended that congregation. Those are the churches that are leading this movement under the banner of the Black Church Food Security Network. And I'm really grateful to be engaged in this work in a really grassroots way. We're thankful for those with mega numbers, but those who are making mega impact that might be smaller in number are really at the front line of our work and organization. So what are we doing? We're looking at a church as an engine for production, for distribution, for marketing, for nutrition, for meal prep, for dealing with food waste. Dr. Leslie, you're making me think about the compost programs we put at churches. And at Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore County, we went to the dump. The church was throwing away these pallets, wooden pallets. We went to the trash can of the church, pulled the pallets out of the dumpster, got some nails, and with the members of the church, we built a 3-bin compost system by taking something out of the waste stream, and then invited the members of the church to bring their food waste on Sundays. When you come to worship, bring your kitchen waste with you. And having the members of the church come on Sundays with their kitchen waste to go into the church's compost system to help support the church's garden ministry. So that even if you don't have a green thumb, just by bringing us the scraps from your kitchen that week, you are part of helping the effort at the church. That's all I got, y'all. Our website is there. We'd love to welcome your support. Thank you. Thank you.